The day is May 3rd, 2014. Headline news around the world reads that the 140th running of the Kentucky Derby results in Victor Espinoza cruising to victory aboard California Chrome.
The remaining 300 Blockbuster storefront locations are now all closed.
Bobby Gregg, American drummer and record producer of Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, dies, aged 78.
The United States and Germany threaten new sanctions against Russia for aggression in the Crimean Peninsula.
Future Callahan winner Cassie Swafford is tearing it up at Ohio Valley Regionals, while Georgia Joja is losing 3 straight games to go.
The 4th season of Mario O'Brien's Rise Up instructional video series is dropping,
while 5 Ultimate is promoting its Cinco de Awesome reversibles.
The American Ultimate Disc League is entering the 4th week of its 3rd season of games. One of the teams, the Rochester Dragons, is traveling across the border to play in the Toronto Rush's home opener, which will be live streamed on ESPN3.
Huck and Hope. Lloyd versus Ferraro, and Mark Lloyd once again proves to be in a league of his own.
A plucky team playing internationally in front of thousands of fans, an incredible display of athleticism, witnessed not just by those in person, but shared to millions and millions of people on Lil Wayne's Facebook page. It is unquestionably the definitive moment of the Rochester Dragons franchise. It is not a success story.
The story of the Rochester Dragons is a completely inexplicable thing, but we're going to try to explain it. To do that, we'll need to look at more than one failed sports franchise. We'll need to look at the league, sport, and society at large. This story will involve the attempted, possibly illegal purchase of a live buffalo, the simultaneous development of multiple professional ultimate frisbee leagues,
a substitute teacher in Florida who became a YouTube star for throwing frisbees into trash cans and divided the culture of a sport and community in the process,
a rapid shift in technology and consumer culture that promised opportunity, adventure, and maybe broke the world, the casual violation of several international controlled substance laws,
and crucially, the purchase of a team on Craigslist by a man who, despite having never seen Ultimate Frisbee played before in his life, held a steadfast belief that an AUDL franchise would restore glory to Western New York. This is Huck and Hope, an American Ultimate story. Like it's 92 again, and I got O's in the rental. Back in the stool again, no problem. It's a whole lot simple when you think back. You thought that you would never make it this far, then you take advantage. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Huck and Hope, an American Ultimate story. Thanks for the initial optimism that it took to press play and make it this far. Who are we talking to you right now? My name is Patrick Stegemoeller. I'm a senior writer at ultiworld.com. And I played on the Rochester Dragons.
And my name is Brian Kibler. I have no title at Ultiworld, no journalistic credentials other than being Pat's buddy. And I also played for the Rochester Dragons.
I like that we started this like it's an AA session where we had to, you have to come forth and say, like, I played on the Rochester Dragons.
Just accepting that pain in your life is like the first step forward.
So why are we doing this? I think an important question to ask yourself about basically anything. One, so that we could, relive the experience that we had a decade ago, but mostly because I think it's actually a pretty interesting story that is not just about a hapless footnote franchise on a professional Ultimate Frisbee league that is 10 seasons into its existence right now, but because I do think it kind of speaks to an era of the sport where our dreams were boundless, things were groovy, everything was growing. And did it make sense what was happening, that there should be 2 Ultimate Frisbee leagues? Did it make sense that people were making it their full-time gig to try to market stuff to Frisbee players? Did it make sense that we were trying to get into the Olympics? I'm not here to say. Maybe by the end of the episodes, we'll have some opinions on that. But it was a very interesting time in the sport that I'm excited to talk more about.
It certainly didn't make sense that people were paying to watch the two of us play sports. That's for sure. It also didn't really make sense that there was a Frisbee team in Rochester.
Yeah, let's start with Rochester, because I think that is an important character to what we're talking about here. Rochester is a city of 211,000, nestled between Lake Erie and the Finger Lakes in western New York. Its leading cultural exports are Wegmans, which is the world's greatest grocery store, and garbage plates, which is the world's greatest, grossest food. Like, Rochester is a city that I love, that I have called home, but it's also not a place that should have a nascent professional sports franchise that's trying to compete with teams from Toronto and New York and Philadelphia. I love Rochester, but the same way that, I love the taco truck down the street from me, I'm not saying that should have a Michelin star. Rochester probably should never have had a team in this league in the first place, and yet it did.
I mean, we're talking about a city that is famous for a defunct Kodak film factory.
Yeah, pretty much. I think, to quote from Rochester's Wikipedia page, the city experienced significant population decline due to deindustrialization in the late 20th century.
Yeah, if like one of the main things people know about your city is a dead factory, maybe not the place to plant a professional franchise.
And it's a place with a great summer league that I've loved playing in. It's got a robust community for such a small city, but it's not the kind of place that has a lot of elite college teams or coaching infrastructure. It's got some high school youth programs, but nothing that's going to compare to what you see in Montreal or Seattle or all these other places that have teams.
Pat, when I think about the existence of the Rochester Dragons, I think about what happens when someone throws a tire into the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Happens all the time.
People don't throw new tires into the ocean. They're throwing tires that did like 60,000 miles on the front left side of a Ford Focus. And the tire's bald and it's a piece of trash. So it gets thrown in the ocean. And it kind of sinks down to the sea floor. But then something pretty cool happens. Some algae attaches to it. And some little shellfish come to feed on the algae and they attach to it. Then you have bigger fish coming to eat the shellfish. And suddenly you have a little ecosystem. Even though there's a piece of trash, you have some life growing. I think there's real beauty in that. And I think that gets it why we want to tell this story, that there's something beautiful here on the tire that is the Rochester Dragons.
But never forgetting that nonetheless, it is still garbage in the ocean.
We're the tire.
Now, if you have no idea what we're talking about here, this is the Rochester Dragons, an AUDL, that's the American Ultimate Disc League franchise. One of the founding franchises in their original iteration as the Buffalo Hunters, formed in one of the few cities maybe less well-equipped to host a professional Ultimate Frisbee franchise than Rochester. That was in the inaugural AUDL season in 2012. In 2013, the owner uprooted the team. He's looking for a new stake. The gold mine turned out to be fallow in Buffalo. So he said, I'm picking up and I'm going to make another camp here in the gold rush that was American professional Ultimate Frisbee in Rochester, New York. And I mean, how would you describe what the composition of the team was from a player's perspective?
So it's like, on one hand, there were like 7 or 8 guys who had proceeded to have like elite or like sub-elite, near elite club careers, including David Ferraro, who was like briefly famous in the Frisbee world for shutting down Bo Kittredge in the national final. And then like the kind of the bottom half of the roster was like replacement level Rochester Summer League guys. And the whole time you're not sure where you fit in if you're someone like me or Pat, and your whole reason for being there and for working out and for throwing is just to prove that you're like on the far right side of the bell curve there. Like you don't want to be one of the replacement level guys, but you're not totally sure which one you are.
And people would give us work in league too, was the thing. Because like being on the Dragons, you were a marked man, and we weren't that much better than the people in league that we could just like show up and dominate them. Like we had to actually try hard in summer league because people were like, I think they were angry. They were upset at us for having the gall to go lose horribly to Canadian teams on camera. So it was a tricky existence. in a sense.
Nothing exposed me in my entire life to more verbal abuse and kind of athletic abuse than wearing a Rochester Dragons jersey. Because it kind of just having the pro jersey on gave people like the latitude to go at you hard and to like make jokes about it. Mm-hmm. Because you're a pro, like you're wearing it, you're showing it off, right? But they also, like you said, they were closer to you in skill level than they should have been. It was tough. And it was
a different era too in the sport. You know, this is like year 2, year 3 of the AUDL. For people who are listening to this that are kind of tied into the Frisbee scene right now, there's a respectability to most of the AUDL franchises, maybe Detroit Mechanics aside, but it was definitely a different era. And it was just less acceptable to be doing this, in a sense, to be like trying to make Frisbee something other than kind of what it was at the time. So I think to talk about the Dragons and why they existed and how they existed, we definitely need to get into what Ultimate was like at the time. And I would love to hear from you kind of like what was going on in your life and your relationship with the sport when you first heard that there was going to be a professional Ultimate League.
I remember it very clearly. I was at Ithaca College. It was, I believe I had just come back from like winter break my junior year. So this would have been like winter of 2012, okay. I believe. We were playing indoor college Frisbee, like mixed indoor college Frisbee, which was a big thing in Western New York.
Upstate New York, the mixed indoor scene, that was the Triple Crown tour of upstate New York.
100%.
Yeah.
And
Ithaca indoor, Clarkson indoor, RIT indoor. That was truly meaningful stuff.
Absolutely. And there was just no regulations on who could play on any college team. So there were like 29-year-old club players coming down to basically dust us. But also maybe the best version of Ultimate is like 80-foot floor indoor 5-on-5.
Some people like kind of drunk inside in a hot gym.
100%.
Just absolute disasters.
Yeah. And every once in a while, someone attempts like a full layout on a basketball court, which is just incredible stuff. Just great theater. So I was at this basically at indoor practice. One of the kind of older women on the women's team was like, I heard they're starting a professional sports league. They're looking for people like Matt. Matt on my team was this guy, Matt McLaughlin. He was a junior college lacrosse player, like maybe had the chops to play D1 lacrosse. It was just like a panther of an athlete.
Headbutted me in a D3 game.
With that tracks. Yeah, 100% tracks, yeah.
What was like your impression when you heard about this league starting?
I was like, it sounds like they don't want people like me. I was like, I'm not going to try out because if that's what they're looking for, they're not going to get it with me. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I gave it a ton of thought other than like feeling a little bit of envy for the type of athletes that would no doubt populate that.
I remember hearing about it for the first time in an email from a guy who sort of played on my college Frisbee team. So I went to SUNY Geneseo, which is a school outside of Rochester. And our team had never made regionals. This is at the D3 level. We had never made regionals before 2013. And we hear from a guy who is sort of like one of those hangers on, someone who would like come to practice occasionally, like could throw a flick. So it was, okay, you're allowed to be here. Like there was a minimum threshold you had to be in order to be socially involved in the scene. And this guy definitely cleared that threshold.
Right.
But he was, I don't know, he was trying to pursue other things with his life. And he sent an email to everybody like, hey, did you see this? Like there's going to be a pro Frisbee league. Isn't this cool and wild? And my initial thought was like, oh, someone has conned this man. Someone has duped this person into thinking that this is true. Like some, we weren't in the AI era back then, but it was still the kind of time where like the internet would do stuff to you, like would figure out your interests.
He's the perfect mark for that too. At his level of like, he knows a little bit, but not enough to know how bad of an idea this is.
Right, exactly. And I completely disregarded it. And then a few months later, heard that, some people from Rochester were going and trying out and stuff like that. Because this is when the team was just going to be in Buffalo. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, weird. Nothing will ever come of this. This will die after one single year, and I don't have to let it take up any space in my brain. And little did I know that it would lead to this moment here right now. So for this program, we have had the pleasure of interviewing a whole lot of people from the Ultimate community who were around during this time, who were luminaries in the sport, pre-pro leagues, post-pro leagues now. And we got to hear from some of them where they were in their lives and what their reaction was when they first heard that there was going to be semi-pro Ultimate.
Hi, I'm Jesse Schaffner.
Tim DeBile, owner of Madison Radicals.
Hi, I'm Gina Titcomb.
I'm Grant Lindsley.
I remember that like a car of people were going to Kentucky to do like jumping tests. I would say it was a lot of like, whoa, what happened at that tryout in Kentucky? Or like, what's going on? It was more like skepticism, a lot of making jokes.
I was really, really into Ultimate at the time. Like that was like my peak. And my window overlooked Breeze Stevens Field. And I just happened to read some post about, someone starting a pro Ultimate League. And I just had this idea of like, boy, that would be, this would be the perfect stadium for that.
I was in college at that, or maybe I just started college, was going to college. So probably a lukewarm reaction to it. And probably a little disappointed because it was only for men's, or it was like the men's division league.
Yeah, I don't remember where I was, but I think the first thing I felt was skepticism. Honestly, my initial reaction was like, this is nothing. It's going to fail quickly, and none of the good players are playing in it.
So many of the major players in Ultimate were skeptical about the viability of a professional league. However, it was still a time of fizzy optimism in the sport. Companies were popping up, marketing specifically to Ultimate players, streaming video, selling apparel, and strength and conditioning programs. It was a time when people were reevaluating what Ultimate could provide. They were starting to consider that Ultimate could be a financially viable enterprise.
And it's into this environment that the AUDL has its inaugural season.
And just to kind of place everyone in the timeline, this is when Lee Semrau was scrolling through Craigslist for...
What do you think he was looking for?
Unknown reasons. Craigslist back then was just a different.
This is like
place.
2011 Craigslist.
You could buy just about anything on Craigslist.
Yeah.
Like prime golden age of Craigslist. I'm not going to speculate as to what Lee was going to buy.
He found maybe the most absurd thing of all that you could buy on there.
He would have been better served buying almost anything else. He buys the franchise and then realizes he needs Frisbee players.
Mm-hmm. But again, doesn't know any.
Doesn't know where to find them. And the place he goes is a Can Jam tournament.
I get that. I get that.
So, and luckily for him, he actually found arguably the best Frisbee player in Buffalo, ultimate Frisbee player in Buffalo at the Can Jam tournament. So he showed up and they were handing out flyers for a tryout for the Buffalo Hunters at a Can Jam tournament. And they encountered TJ Burns, who was he's still actually crushing it in the mixed division, but he was a very, very good cutter who's been in Buffalo for a long time. That feels like a crazy stroke of luck that they actually encountered a good Frisbee player there.
It's funny that he was at a Can Jam tournament at all.
Totally crazy.
That's the closest. That was just like the closest analog to Frisbee that I had. I mean, if you're going to start somewhere, I guess it makes sense. And good on TJ, I guess, for being open-minded enough that if a stranger walks up to the flyer saying, "Hey, come try out for my professional Frisbee team," do you think he's like really good at Can Jam? And he got identified by Lee. Like Lee was watching the Can Jam players and was like, "This is the one. This is the guy here." He's like Danny Ocean.
I did not get the sense that there was like a high-level scouting situation going on here. I would imagine TJ was probably pretty good at it. I think it was a situation where TJ saw this flyer, saw these guys handing out these flyers, and realized if they're really going to do this, as kind of inexplicable as it is, they needed him.
Right.
I think he felt a real sense of duty that if they were gonna try to put a pro team in Buffalo, he had to be a part of it.
But we go from that place to both of us ending up playing on the team for multiple seasons.
It became clear pretty quickly that it was going to be attainable to make the roster. That was a goal that was within reach.
Because we didn't suck.
And we both worked hard.
Yeah.
They're going to carve that into my tombstone. He didn't suck, And he worked hard.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, so we both played for the first time in the 2014 season. That's where I officially met you. We had played against each other in college a bit. I knew who you were because you have a nickname that stands out, Barbie.
That's true.
We were like, oh, that's the kind of jacked dude on Ithaca who always plays in cutouts that like show off his obliques. That was sort of your reputation that we had. And I was excited to be teammates with that guy.
That's a nice thing to say, Pat. Really pumping my tires up. Yeah, I knew of you as well. I knew of you as well, that you were like a kind of a fiery handler who liked to foul on defense, which was also how I played. And I think that there were two ways it could have gone. We could have hated each other, and we could have really liked each other. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be in your wedding in a few months, so it worked out the second way.
And our friendship, would not exist without that experience of being on the Dragons together. Those late night Facebook messages, 2014, 2015 of just, yo, can you fucking believe this bullshit? We emerged from that garbage tire that was thrown into the ocean and had a really meaningful friendship. It might be the only meaningful thing that really came out of the Dragons experience for me, but I'm happy that it exists.
I am too, Pat.
But going into that experience, we had no idea what the next decade would have in store. Not just for us as individuals, but for the sport, for the country as a whole. In 2013, it felt like we were on the brink of something. Frisbee itself seemed like it was on the precipice of some major leap, some great movement forward. And at that time, just basically anything seemed possible.
So this is where we're going to leave you for now. The sport is a cauldron of optimism. Companies are popping into existence, looking to capitalize on the excitement. People are dreaming big. They have visions of sold-out stadiums, deals with Nike, Olympic medals. And in that bubbling primordial soup is Lee Semrau, having just realized his destiny to bring professional ultimate to Western New York. Lee, and the sport as a whole, were standing on a ledge, about to take the plunge on a deeply American dream. One that required vision, determination, and courage, as well as myopia, obstinance, and hubris. It would lead to hapless Western New York college kids playing in front of 1,000 screaming fans. It would create unprecedented exposure for the sport. It would also lead to absurd contradictions, a culture war, and financial ruin. It's a story of transformation and upheaval, of success and failure. It's the story of a man, a team, and a sport taking an ambitious gamble and living with the consequences.
And we're going to try to tell that story. So please join us next time on Huck and Hope. Huck and Hope is an Ultiworld podcast produced by Lindsay Sue. If you'd like to get in touch, you can email the show at huckandhope@ultiworld.com.
Next time on Huck and Hope.
The progress isn't just going to be linear because you've done something once that is good and that people like.
I was like, what do you think the chance of success of this is? I was sort of surrounded by irrational exuberance.
Like, did we slow down enough? Did the people in power with money slow down enough to, or do they even care? I don't know, maybe when it's just, when your money's wrapped up in it, you don't ask that question.